What were they trying to describe? Because this sounds completely insane.
When you get into like because isn't there like Egyptian stuff where there's like men coming down from space and like
Stargates. There's all sorts of weird shit.
That to me is just like fallen angels. You know, it's all kind of lining up in some kind of way or another. These whatever rebelled against God and came down here. Men from the sky came down here and were pretty much posing as gods and demanding people worship them. And isn't Enoch where they teach them about money and teach them about sorcery and
sorcery and agriculture and metallurgy. There's all sorts of like weird, they talk about incantations and then like how to get out of incantations if one gets put on you. It's like,
and you got to think this is pre-Jesus, and so God is separated from man, so we're just walking around as people like not knowing what's going on, and these things come down and they're boring giants and stuff. Is like, you know, I'd probably think it's a god too, for God's sakes, you know, because there wasn't, what was the Jews even a thing when the book of Enoch was written?
Sure, yeah. They were
God's chosen people.
The people that argued over whether or not the book of Enoch should be included in the canon were rabbis.
Yeah.
It's all so confusing.
Is there any explanation of why it would be left out?
Well, they felt like it didn't jive with the Torah. I think that's the reason why it was left out.
Well, I mean, when I say that, like, at one point, the Jews were God's chosen people, is like they knew the God, the one, the I am, the one true God, but the rest of the world didn't really know what was going on, and so they were worshiping other gods, and so, like, aside from the Jews, the rest of humanity, seeing these things walking around, it's like, I'm sure they would think that's a god. You know, I'm sure they would worship that. What else do they have to believe?
Well, if something did come and visit ancient humans, I'm in the middle of this Richard Dolan book, and it's a very interesting book on UFOs. And Richard Dolan is a very, objective, scientifically minded author. One of the things he's talking about is this gene expression. It's a D allele that it was introduced through breeding. So one of the things that we know is that it came into the human population somewhere around 40,000 years ago. And that all geneticists agree that this was introduced through crossbreeding. So the idea was it introduced by Neanderthals? Was it introduced by Denisovans? Like what type of human? Well, the problem is they don't find that gene expression in any other ancient human. Like they don't find it in Neanderthals, they don't find it, but they do find it in Asia, like in Mongolia. Most people have it. The rest of the world, it's like 70% of the people have it, and they think it's responsible for creativity. They think it's responsible for this giant change in the artwork that people start producing around 40,000 years ago. And his assertion, or his question, the hypothesis, is that it was introduced by some other species. And this is also part of what is talked about, not just in the Book of Enoch, but also in the Sumerian text. They talk about what happened that created human beings. And so what he's talking about is this one woman that was an academic, I forget her name, but she wrote these books about it where she believes that human beings are some sort of a hybrid species, and that we were genetically manipulated to be what we are now.
And I think, going back to the flood, because apparently, like every other religion has some type of evidence of a great flood, correct?
Yeah.
So at one point or another, if God's creation did get corrupt,
right,
that was pretty much the great reset of he had to get rid of all that he didn't create. And I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah.
Well, they do all have a flood myth, and now because of the Younger Dryas impact theory, we know that there most likely was massive floods all over the earth somewhere around 11,800 years ago.
Yeah, and I just think about stuff like that when they find this skull that they can't link anything to, or find stuff that they can't link anything to. It's like, we don't really know what happened a long time ago. We can pretend that we did, but I personally believe there was an advanced civilization way back in the day before all that. And,
There's a lot of evidence that points to that.
yeah.
There's also new evidence that just emerged out of China. They found a Homo sapien skull that's 1 million years old.
Well, it's China.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's an actual Homo sapien skull that was carbon dated to 1 million years old. So that predates what we thought of as the emergence of Homo sapiens by 500,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's just what we found, right? They might find another one 6 months from now that's 2 million years old. So they don't really know. We're piecing things together. We're piecing the past together with a very limited amount of information, very limited evidence. And evidence of fossils, it's very difficult to make a fossil. Most fossils, they don't happen. The animals eat the bones deteriorate in the sun. There's a very specific set of circumstances that has to happen for something to be fossilized.
Haven't they found some fossils with like grass still in their mouth? And so they were wondering they found some type of evidence of fossils where it seems like this animal was fossilized instantly.
Yes. Well, not even fossilized, just preserved instantly.
Yeah.
Like this is woolly mammoths. There's
Like
quite a few of
knives.
them. They think a lot of that was what happened during the impact. So Randall Carlson talks about this quite a bit. There's multiple places on Earth where there's a large number of animals that seem to have died instantaneously, and weirdly, like with broken legs, like broken mammoth legs, over like a large field of them. Thousands of them there. Like, what happened? Like, some sort of an event must have happened where they were wiped out, or the ones that were in this area were wiped out instantaneously. And he thinks it's probably some sort of a collision.
It's a mass casualty of some sort.
Yes.
I mean, what else can cause that?
Well, not only that, 65%, something like that, of all North American megafauna died off at the exact same time. All been around that same Younger Dryas impact theory time, between 11,800 years ago and 10,000 years ago. Everything, woolly mammoth, African lion, African cheetah. There was all sorts of giant sloths, all sorts of weird animals that all died off in America around the exact same time that they think this flood happened. And it used to be just complete speculation, but now they find core samples where they're finding iridium, which indicates iridium is very common in space and very rare on Earth. So when they find a layer of iridium, it indicates there's some sort of an impact.
Interesting.
It's wild shit, man, because it could happen to us at any moment. You know, there's this guy, Avi Loeb, who's a professor out of Harvard, who is saying that some of these objects that we're seeing in space, they're moving in very bizarre ways. They're enormous. They have much more mass and much more speed. They're interstellar objects, and he's speculating whether or not they're alien.
We got one passing by pretty soon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been following that one.
Yeah, this is one of the ones he's talking
Yeah,
about.
they think it's a spaceship.
They think it's something, you know, whatever it is.
For it to come outside of our solar
Yeah.
system on this path is just very bizarre.
Very bizarre, but other astronomers say, yeah, but it just might be unique. Like there's a lot of stuff in space they're finding through the James Webb Telescope that they didn't understand. So they had this idea of the universe being 13.7 or whatever it is billion years old. But now they're finding these galaxies that were formed far too quickly, like after the Big Bang. And so now they're starting to say, well, this might be an indication that it's quite a bit older, and that maybe it's not maybe the Big Bang is not 13.7 billion years, but that's just as far back as we can look. And as they get better and better equipment and better ways of looking, they'll be able to find more evidence and more information that gives them more questions and less answers. It's really weird. It's like, there's a quote by Dennis McKenna, and he said that once the bonfire of knowledge expands, the surface layer of ignorance is exposed. More of a surface layer of ignorance. So the more you see, the more you learn, the more you realize, oh, I don't know shit. And that's what they're kind of finding out about space. It's like they know a lot, but they don't know a lot in comparison to what's out there.
More questions pop up than answers.
Yeah, I mean, it might be.
This is wild too. How much of that we were taught in school is like fact. And
Yeah.
you grow up and like, wait a minute, we don't really know what's going on.
I didn't even know there was dwarf planets in our solar system.
Yeah.
There's planets that aren't like
Yeah.
regular planets, but I didn't learn about those.
I might have learned that 3 years ago.
Pretty wild to think that they're
I'm 32.
that they're there and we never learned about them.
Yeah.
Well, there's also speculation there's something big that's outside of the Kuiper Belt. There's like some other planet that it might even be a dwarf star. Or what is it called? I forget what they're called, a brown dwarf. But that we might have a binary star system, and that the star might have died off, and it's like in a far outside of our own sun, outside of that orbit.
Wow.
So there's this thing called the Kuiper Belt that's outside of Pluto, and it's a belt of objects, and that's one of the reasons why Pluto got declassified as a planet, because it is a little too small to be a planet, and it seems like there's a lot of these objects out there, and then they found a couple more, and they're saying, okay, it's not a planet, but there seems to be a drop-off after that, which indicates something that is of a large mass exists.
Interesting.
But it's a little too far for us to be able to look at right now, so it's a lot of just speculation. What was that one paper that we looked at once that they had documented a planet out there that they were calling Planet X, but it's like
The Earth-like? Was it like an Earth-like?
they don't know what it is. I mean, this is the fucking Sumerian tech stuff too, because they talk about this planet called Nibiru that comes within an elliptical orbit every 3,600 years and fucks things up, and that's where the Anunnaki live. They'll come visit us. This is this guy Zechariah Sitchin. It's fascinating stuff. So fun. It's so fun, but might be full of shit. In fact, there's a whole website called sitchiniswrong.com that refutes it, but I'm too dumb to know who's right and who's wrong.
It's still interesting to talk about and theorize, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Sumerians had a detailed map of the solar system 6,000 years ago, bizarrely, with the sun in the center and all the planets that we know of in the relative size and the relative order, like the ones that are the right, not exactly the right size because they're so fucking huge, but the bigger ones are in the bigger
relative,
place.
yeah.
And it shows this map of the solar system on this clay tablet from 9,000 or 6,000 years ago. Like, how did they know that?
Yeah, it goes back to the advanced civilization, man. I don't know. I just
How
really think
advanced do you think?
I think it was a different type of advance, like not power lines and stuff like that. I think they honed into like natural energy from the earth. Like I heard something about the pyramids may have been like some type of a power plant because they just found where those pillars go down in the ground. So
That stuff's wild. That stuff's wild. I did this dude Ben van Kerkwyk, and they've used that same technology to find this enormous labyrinth that existed, but that was also documented historically. Herodotus talked about it, and different historians have talked about it. This labyrinth that's even more impressive than the pyramids underground. And inside, using this technology, they've found this 40 meter, this metallic, they don't know what kind of metal it is, but there's a metallic tic-tac shaped object that's 40 meters long at the center of this labyrinth. So they built a dam in the 1960s to help the farmers out, and the dam unfortunately fucked up the water table, so this labyrinth is now flooded. So you can't get in it unless they do something to change the water and, change how the water is channeled or build a tunnel inside of it. But the water table has made it impossible to get into it without doing that. But this thing, because of this tomography, this ground penetrating radar, they know that there's an enormous metallic object from thousands and thousands of years ago that's 40 meters long.
Are they actively trying to figure it out, like get in there?
There are researchers that are, but the problem is there's a lot of resistance from the Egyptian government.
I figured.
Yeah, they don't want any monkey wrench in the timeline that they've been teaching forever.
yeah, I've seen one article. They just discovered some ancient city, and it was like they discovered something. It was related to Christianity. Like they discovered something, Christ is king, but long story short, the whole entire project just got shut down, and they passed a law you can't dig there for like 20 years.
I think you're talking about Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Göbekli Tepe, which is in Turkey. They found that by accident. It was a farmer. The farmer was, I think it was a sheep herder actually. Found some stone that was in the ground. He's like kicked at it and he like cleaned it off a little bit, and then realized it had a right angle to it. He's like, what the hell is this? Then he dug a little deeper, and then they called in the archaeologists. They said, hey, we got something here. And then they discovered that there's these concentric circles and these huge stone columns and 3D animals, and they've only uncovered 5% of it so far. And they kind of stopped digging because they get an enormous amount of tourist revenue where people want to come to the site, and they didn't want to fuck that up. And there's a lot of weirdness when you let these governments decide what can and can't be explored. Because through ground penetrating radar, they realize that this site, even though they've only excavated 5% of it, is one of many sites that are in that area. And the age of it is really fascinating because this was intentionally covered somewhere around 11,000 years ago. So that means that someone decided to cover this all up with dirt 11,000 years ago, which means they don't even know how old it is. It could be 2,000, 3,000 years older than that. They don't know.
And it's just weird to just stop finding that out.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're getting a lot of pressure now, so they might start opening up the excavation of it. And they did a lot of stupid shit, like they covered it with olive trees for some reason. Yeah, like I think because olive trees are protected, so if they covered it with olive trees, you couldn't dig into the ground, you couldn't remove the olive trees. It was like a way to stop people from looking around. Interesting. Yeah, but now they realize that the olive trees, the roots are actually destroying the artifacts that are underneath. So now they're pulling the olive trees, and now there's discussions about continuing the excavations.
I got off on a giant kick one time.
Oh!
And it's like anytime the Smithsonian got involved,
Oh yeah,
it just shut down.
Yeah, the giant stuff is weird because there's a lot of documentation of people finding giants, like enormous,
Giant bones.
10, 15 foot tall humans, and then there's also the Nephilim in the Bible that are giants that consumed everything. That were, David and Goliath. There's giants in the Bible, and it makes you think like, okay, is it a giant like the mountain from the Game of Thrones?
Just a big
that's
guy.
Maybe.
People were shorter relatively back then.
Right, but probably some people weren't.
Yeah.
If they lived in some places where they had more resources and better genes. Yeah.
Pituitary gland problems, where we have guys 7'11" plus,
Yep, but this seems different. The giants in the Bible and the giants in historical accounts, it seems different. It seems like it's a totally different species of human. And again, if we just found this guy recently that's 1 million years old, and now we know. So forever they were saying that human beings, the timeline used to be Homo sapiens emerged 50,000 years ago. Then they moved it to 150. Then they moved it to 250, 300. As they find more information. Now they have to push it to 1 million. And if one day they find a fucking head as big as this table, like what do they do? What do they do about that? Do they even tell us?
I don't think they would.
I don't think they would.
But why wouldn't they? That's what's weird. Why wouldn't they? Isn't that crazy? But we all agree. We all agree that if they did find a giant, they probably wouldn't tell us.
Yeah.
But not until they did their own, figured it out for themselves or tested on what they want.
No, if they want people to know, but I don't know why they wouldn't want people to know. Like, why am I convinced that they would hide that?
Well, if there is Antichrist on his way, and his goal, he already knows he lost. So his goal at this point is just to destroy as much as possible, get as many souls as possible. And finding stuff like that would prove the Bible more true would turn more people to Christianity or to God, the one true God. Then I could see where if there is like some type of spiritual force that is in somewhat control, then I could see that's the only way I can make sense of it. Is like, why cover up progress? Why not tell people the truth?
Well, I think it's ego, and that might be also related to good and evil in a lot of ways.
Loving yourself, and you're supposed to love God over yourself.
Right, and being the person that has the knowledge and the person that distributes that knowledge and is the gatekeeper of it is a very intoxicating thing for a lot of these academics. And if all of a sudden something comes along and this is the speculation about what happened with the Smithsonian, that they took that stuff and just fucking tucked it away.
I would think they would want to have, secretly do their own tests without anybody knowing about it.
I know,
once
but to what end? At one point in time,
before everybody else knows, they would already have the answers. I don't know.
But wouldn't there be a time where someone would want to, be the guy who discovered it all and get all the credit for it? Like, that's why it doesn't make sense.
To me, if somebody knows God, it is freeing in a lot of way. And you realize that, no government is above you, or no man is above you. God is above you, and you serve God. And if you can keep people away from God, you're that much more susceptible to being a slave to something else.
Yeah, like whatever evidence or anything that kind of